My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Joe Dobbes. It's July 14th, 2025. We're at Orchard House Estate in Salem. And Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Great to have you here.
First question, why wine?
Why wine? Because I didn't go into medicine. So I studied biology at Southern Oregon University in Ashland. Graduated in the early 80s. I was getting ready to study for MCAT, the MCAT tests. My dad was a physician, had a lot of influence on me. And decided I was tired of school. I wanted to ride my bike across Europe. I wanted to learn about the wine business. And in the early 80s, I think it was around 82, Elk Cove Vineyards had gotten some international acclaim. Funny thing is, Elk Cove was the first winery I ended up working for in 86, 87, after going to Germany in 85. So cutting to the chase, I worked for about a year. I got a green card to go to Europe and did an apprenticeship at a winery called Weingut Erbhoff Tesch in the Nahe wine region, one of the 11. And so I did the 85 vintage there, epic vintage. Of course, I didn't know the difference, but it was an epic vintage. It was on the making of some rare wines, Beer and Auslese and Trockenbeer and Auslese and ice wines. And so it was an amazing entree into the industry. So I spent about a year and a half there and had some great experiences, difficult experiences, being abroad by myself and all. So it's a good way to grow up quickly.
For sure.
In a country where it wasn't my native tongue.
Sure. Pick it back up there in a second. Let's talk a little bit about life before that. Tell us about where you were born and raised and life before SOU.
I was born in Chicago, Illinois. My dad was in medical school there. He was an osteopathic physician. And moved us to Colorado when I was very young, and then to Oregon in '71. So I grew up on a gentleman's farm, 60 acres of lake, fields, trees, motorcycles, hunting, fishing. It was an epic way to grow up and learn the value of hard work. And actually started my first business when I was 12 years old, growing Marionberries, selling the Smuckers. So that was my entree into business. So it was great upbringing. I was very, very blessed. So that's about an hour away from here. And went to high school in Malala, went to college in Southern Oregon, as I said, and here I am, 40 years later.
You mentioned that you were kind of heading down the medical school path and took a turn. So why wine and why Germany? Why was that the path you chose?
Our family is Germanic, about half German, and in the early 80s, Riesling was king, shall I say, or queen, to Pinot Noir. People came to Oregon in the early 70s in search of the greatest place in the United States to grow Pinot Noir. However, a lot of the earlier grapes that were planted were Riesling, and because of my Germanic background, tasting Riesling, just decided to go to Germany. And by chance, my dad met a yeast geneticist from Darmstadt at the university there, and he set me up for an apprenticeship, and there I went to Germany in 1985. So it was kind of serendipitous. My dad was standing in the food line at the first International Cool Climate Symposium in Eugene at Himden Vineyards, another place I ended up working. Met Herr Schmidt, and he set me up. So life's funny. So I went to Germany and did my apprenticeship there and decided no medical school.
So tell me about the wine part of it. What you mentioned, obviously, you're in a place that's not your native language, and you kind of traveling abroad by yourself. Tell me about the work you did on the wine side. What do you remember about it? What was exciting about it?
Oh boy, I did everything there was to do, with the exception of selling the wine and marketing the wine in Germany. So I had to learn to speak German. I worked in the vineyards. I worked in the cellar. The cellar staff was from Spain primarily, and Hungary, and in the vineyard as well. So I learned a lot about different cultures. Got to learn the language, made a group of friends there in Germany, some in the wine business, a bunch that were just about my age in the Catholic youth group, and did a lot of growing up. But basically just everything to do with the wine business. I mean, remember scrubbing tanks and figuring out a different way to clean a tank to get the tartrates out of there, and Manuel, the cellar master, sure appreciated that when I gave him another suggestion on how to best clean a tank and just everything there was to do. It was a great experience. And the Germans, I learned, they do wine where the French, jumping ahead, they live wine. It was kind of like doing versus living. It was a different approach. So anyway, it was great seminal experience.
So what came next?
Elk Cove, 86, 87. So I got back to Oregon, wrote some letters, and Pat and Joe Campbell at Elk Cove answered my letter and welcomed me in, and I was their cellar master. So great experience working with them, Pat and Joe. They're very driven, very successful. Some of the early pioneers that came to Oregon, right, in search of the Holy Grail, the best place to grow Pinot Noir. And their son now, Adam, is doing a beautiful job, and his sister Anna, and they were both young, very young and in school when I was working there. It's really cool to see. And Pat and Joe are stepping away, have been stepping away, and they've really grown that winery to be incredibly successful. Boy, we worked with Riesling, a tiny bit of Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. I actually helped plant the La Bohème vineyard, my little claim to fame while working there. I showed them how to make Trockenbier and Auslese style Riesling, which was a lot of fun. So it was my contribution to, to Elk Cove. I sprayed vineyards a little bit. Actually did a lot of marketing and sales for them. So it was a great entree in Oregon and how to approach Pinot Noir, right? And I had to unlearn some of the things I learned in Germany because the Germans are so technical, and they would sterile filter, and actually they pasteurized the wine where I was working. It was a big winery, so it was like, okay, you're going to kill it twice and put it in the bottle. Like, okay, what do you mean you don't pasteurize the wine? You don't sterile filter the Pinot Noir? No. So, I learned the highly technical way to make wine, and then came to Oregon, and we're using buckets to put Pinot Noir into the press and press it out, and probably stomp some grapes by foot when it was appropriate at the same time. Completely different scale, completely different equipment and varietals. So I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. Then I went to Burgundy in '88. The International Pinot Noir celebration, the first one was in 1987 in McMinnville. And I was very fortunate. I got to attend. I met Christophe Roumier, Dominique Lafon, Véronique Drouin, all in '87. I mean, these are, seminal winemakers, famous winemakers, rock stars, I call them, from Burgundy. And Christophe said, "Hey, we can make fast friends." He said, "Come work with me." I'm like, "Really?" So I took January of '88 off and went and worked with Christophe and had my eyes opened, right? So I'd seen the German experience, highly technical. Elk Cove, focus on Pinot Noir, a lot of handwork, small scale, no filtration. And then I went to Burgundy. So, I tasted and worked with, well, I'm jumping ahead here, but in January of '88, I tasted, with Drouin, Domaine de la Romani-Conti, Dujac, Griveau, you name it, I could write the book. And I came back and it was like, I need to go spend a year. And I did. So I sold my car, I deferred my student loans, and jumping forward, I went to Burgundy in September of '88. And then my eyes were really open. It was an amazing experience. So I lived with Christophe Roumier, Domaine G. Roumier in Chambol, and then Dominique Lafon, Domaine de Comte Lafon, was actually his brother-in-law at the time. So I got to work for both of them, right? Hang out with Christophe most of the time. I joke, I wasn't there to make money, I was there to learn. And I joke that the money that I earned, a little bit, was spent on toothpaste and Michelin star restaurants, because we would go out about once a month to a Michelin restaurant. Everyone would bring their wines and sit down and taste wines and talk shop, and I was just a big sponge. It was really incredible. We got to go taste wines in a lot of different cellars. So 1960 Grands et Chazot at Domaine de la Romani-Conti. Aubert de Villain opened up because he learned that was my birth year. So I knew the right people, right? These luminaries. Had an amazing experience. I mean, I was pinching myself all the time. I got to go to the Hospice de Beaune, what they call the Trois Glorias, so the big dinners. I went to the one at Clos de Vougeot and Chateau Marceau, and I remember Dominique Lafon, there was the hottest ticket in town, and I'm sitting next to him, and all these bottlers are going by in a quick sequence, and some of them didn't have labels on them. I said, well, what's this? What's this? He said, oh, that was a 71 Le Morichet from whomever. And he says, Joe, the wealthiest person in the world couldn't have acquired the wines that you're going to taste tonight. I'm like, wow. It was, I'm forgetting so many of the opportunities that I had, but this is just kind of the top line. It was really, really incredible. So when I was at Roumier, as I said, I worked with Dominique a little bit. I took a few trips to Alsace, hung out with André Ostertag, another luminary, because it was kind of like this high-end club. They all knew each other, right? And so I learned how the French make wine. They live it, they breathe it. As I said, the Germans, in my opinion, and I don't mean in a derogatory way, but the Germans do it, the French live it and breathe it. That's what they do, at least where I was. But I was incredibly privileged because I worked with some amazing growers, right, and producers. So, I can name the vineyards: Great Grand Cru Vineyards, Bon Mar, Le Morichet. Great experience.
So at that point, you had, in a pretty short time, you had seen three very different parts of the world.
Yeah.
The winemaking.
Yeah.
What were you sort of looking ahead for yourself? What were you maybe hoping for at that point or planning for at that point?
Well, I had actually considered a little bit about staying in Burgundy because it was such, so storied and so historical and beautiful and amazing wines. But it's like, okay, my family's in Oregon. There's lots going on in Oregon. I felt, and I was correct, I was at the very beginning of the curve. So, the Ponzis, the Sokolblassers, Pat and Joe Campbell, Dick Erath, Bill Fuller, and others that I'm overlooking right now came to Oregon in the early 70s. And I call them the modern pioneers of the Oregon wine industry. So they did the blocking and tackling for us. And the reason I call them the modern pioneers is because, Richard Summers in the early 60s came to Oregon. There's vineyards in Oregon right now that are well over 100 years old that I don't know who planted them, but up in the Dalles, the pines, Zinfandel, turn of the century down in Southern Oregon, Peter Britt was growing grapes, and all this better than I do. Laurel Ridge has some incredibly old vines. So the modern era, 70s, Adelsheim, of course, David Adelsheim, probably one of the most influential growers in the state of Oregon. I mean, he's the one that's responsible for bringing in the Dijon clones, the Bethel Heights family, the founders of Bethel Heights, International Pinot Noir celebration, Oregon Pinot Camp. I mean, they really opened up the world's view of what was going on in Oregon. But I have to say, even when I was at Roumier in '88, Myron Redford's story, there were growers, not growers, but retailers, restaurateurs, distributors, mega fans that would show up by appointment only. And, I was a little fly on the wall, and they'd say, well, who are you? Because I was an American. And so, oh, you're from Oregon. Their eyebrows raised. That's where I first heard about Myron Redford. Yeah, there's this hippie in Oregon, that has this old barn, been making wine since the early 70s, et cetera. And then I finally met Myron. It's funny, I'm jumping around here, but the first person I met in Oregon was Russ Rainey from Evesham Wood. When I came back, first person in the Oregon wine business, he actually worked at Arab Tesh in 1971. Where I worked in '85, '86. And when I was there, the family at Arab Tesh was telling me about this American that worked for them. I didn't know he was from Oregon. And so the first person I met at a big meeting up in at the Red Line in Vancouver, Washington, was Russ Rainey. So, small world.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, great experience in Burgundy. And then when I came back, it's like, well, did I want to come back? Yeah. And then first head of winemaking job was in '89 at not at Elk Cove, Eola Hills Wine Cellars. And again, I wrote some letters, and Tom Huggins reached out to me. But I was hooked. I knew I wanted to do wine. I didn't want to get into wine sales. I thought about culinary school for a while, but it was wine. That was it. So, also had a big influence with my mother and my grandmother growing up. Spent a lot of time in their kitchen, and I was always into analyzing flavors and aromas. The joke was I was going to get my nose bit off and stick it in the wrong spot sometime. But I would. Nobody taught me this stuff, but I would be tasting some food and saying, "Oh, there's a little bit of this or a little bit of that," and I'm like, "Wow, really?" A little bit of tarragon or something. And for me, I think it was kind of a sixth sense. I was blessed with that, maybe the nature nurture, the way I grew up. I don't know, but some of it was instinctive. And early in my career, and even now, I mean, after looking at my 40th vintage. There's things that I think about that I've never read about, nobody's ever told me about, the best of my recollection, that I go down this path. I suppose everybody does that. I can't get in everyone else's head, but there's some things I do in winemaking that are, shall I say, fairly innovative, that haven't been done by others, so I'm told, that have really kind of become part of my standard operating procedure, and I think, dare I say, I'm making the best wines of my life, and that has a lot to do with it. So, Sheryl Crow used to make that joke that after 30 years, I'm an overnight success, right? I mean, after 40 years, I'm finally realizing some things and how I want to make wine, and it's a lot of fun. This is my crescendo project, really. My passion project, my final effort in showing the world what I can do and help showcase Oregon. The industry has been really good to me. And I'd like to think I've given a lot back.
So tell me about coming back to Oregon and landing at Oa Hills and starting your Oregon path at that point. What was the nature of the industry at that point, and how, as you joined it, I guess, how did it feel to be part of it?
Yeah, a lot of people, so this was 89 was my first vintage at Oa Hills. So I shared the vintage with Ken Wright. He was a consulting winemaker. Then he left to focus on Panther Creek, and I made the 90 wines. But, I remember meeting Mark Vlasic. International Pinot Noir celebration, of course, was going. There are a lot of people to meet. Those were some really seminal years for the industry, too, because we were reaching out and doing, road trips to Chicago and New York and Miami, et cetera, et cetera. And we were still a young industry, okay? Pinot Noir, so timeline here, 89. Pinot Noir, we'd already made our impression, our mark. We're still way in the infancy stage in the industry. I think we're kind of in the juvenile, well, not in the mature stage, for sure. Right now, but some of the wines, honestly, that were being made were not good. They were not commercially acceptable, and we didn't have the Dijon clones in production at that point, specifically Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Backing up, I think we struggled as an industry in the earlier years. The vintages were cooler than they are right now. And remind me to talk about that because I get asked about that a lot, but. Going forward, so the first clones primarily we were growing in Oregon were the 108 Chardonnay clone, and it ripened late. We weren't as experienced in the vineyard. There were cooler vintages, and you put all those factors together, and we weren't as experienced as winemakers. Some of the wines that we were making were not balanced. Some of them were honestly technically off, sweet and sour, acetic. Or well-made and maybe a little higher acid than we would like. So we put together, I'm sounding harsh, but I mean, as a winemaker, you got to be harsh. You got to be like really, really critical and have your eyes open. You can only get one chance to impress somebody with your wine, whether it be a customer at your tasting room or somewhere in Chicago, right, or a reviewer. So we set up, and this was the Barney Watson at Oregon State Food and Wine Science program was instrumental in that, and you probably could tell me others that were instrumental in putting a lot of these things together. Stephen Carey, David Adelsheim, I know, Bethel Heights folks, Ponzi, et cetera. So a lot of pioneers, we put together these tastings. I remember we had at the state capitol here in Salem, And there would be a blind tasting, we'd have a panel. And all these wines were coming through to be pre-screened for seminars and a road trip that was going to happen, say, in Chicago or New Orleans or whatever. And it was thumbs up, thumbs down. And so if you wanted to participate, your wine had to make the cut. And I think that was really brilliant and great forethought by the pioneers, modern day pioneers, is to, if we're going to go out and show the world what we're doing, or the United States at least at a minimum, we better put our best foot forward. Also, some of the luminaries, David Adelsheim. There's another gentleman that I met younger years growing up who were instrumental in drafting the laws with the Oregon Liquor OLCC, the laws, production laws. So, for instance, if it's Pinot Noir, if it's Chardonnay, if it's Riesling, it's got to be 90% varietal. AVA rules, et cetera, and the federal is only 75% for non-Bordeaux or Rhone varietals. A little looser, of course, for those, but based on tradition and how they're made and what's put into them. And I know that was instrumental to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. This is Pinot Noir. It's 90% Pinot Noir, usually 95 or more. It's not, 85% Pinot Noir and 15% Syrah, right? So making really varietally correct wines. Stephen Carey, I don't recall the name of his company, but I actually interviewed with him when I came back.
Carey Oregon Wines.
Carey Oregon Wines, thank you. He was working here in Salem. I interviewed with him when I came back from Elk Cove because I was still, from Germany in '86. And I hadn't yet interviewed with Elk Cove where I took the production position, but I wasn't 100% sure. I was thinking about culinary school. I was thinking about wine sales. I just wanted to see what was out there. Well, here I am 40 years later, and look at these hands. Still into making wine. Yeah. So, the earlier years, and then, of course, David Adelsheim was influential in bringing in the Dijon clones. And to complete my story, or finish the loop on Chardonnay, so he brought in some of these clones that ripened earlier, what they were working with in Burgundy that were more appropriate to, what we're making here. And all of a sudden, we woke the world up to Chardonnay. My mission in my older years is show the world what world-class Sauvignon Blanc is all about.
So take us through from Eola Hills, next steps for you. What were the big moments, big career moves for you, as you went forward from there?
Yeah, Eola Hills. So first had winemaking jobs. So Ken Wright and I shared the vintage. Then he left. I finished the '89 wines and I made the '90 wines. Then I had an opportunity to go to Hinman Vineyards in Eugene. And Doyle Hinman, and he had a partner, David. I don't remember his last name now. You might know. They were partners, and they ran into some rough spots. And Carolyn Chambers, pioneer in cable television in Eugene, amongst other things, bought Hinman Vineyards, and they recruited me to go work there. Those were some rough times in my life because I was married to the general manager's daughter, and life was a little rough. So I figured, okay, I need to go to Hinman and see what's going on. But for me, that was an amazing career move. It was difficult personally, but from a professional standpoint, I think it really helped launch Joe Dobbes. The wines, the quality of the wines, they needed a new winemaker, okay? So they hired me, we well crossed our fingers and came out at the Oregon State Fair, when the Oregon State Fair used to be a really big thing. Again, Myron Redford and a lot of the early pioneers, that was the marquee. It's like, okay, we'll see how we did. And for Riesling, Pinot Gris, and Pinot Noir, I won 3 gold medals in Best of Show. It was like, holy crap, this is pretty cool. So got a lot of press and a lot of attention right there. And so that got me, a lot of personal attention, the winery as well. When I was at Hinman, then we started Sylvan Ridge, which was the reserve label. Introduced a few wines to Oregon that had never been made yet. One was semi-sparkling Muscat, so low alcohol, spritzy from early Muscat. Dessert wines, Muscat, dessert wine, beer now slays a Riesling, I guess. Well, Elk Cove and others had made that before. Pinot Gris was kind of a new paradigm in there. So this is the early 90s, right? And King Estate helped put that on the map. So King Estate started making wine a few blocks away from Hinman Vineyards in 1992. I actually interviewed with them, but I didn't get hired. Ownership at Hinman got a little anxious about that. Pushed me real hard to sign a non-compete, and I said, no, we're not going to go there. And I just put my nose to the grindstone, and we got some great press and elevated the quality of what was going on there, and they rewarded me commensurately, and it was like, cool, it was great. Seminal moment in my career was Ed King in '92 and had Andrei Chelichev at the winery to show them what they're doing here in Oregon, focus on Pinot Gris and Pinot Noir and Chardonnay to a lesser extent at the time. And he invited Lynn Penner-Ash and myself to sit and have an audience with Andrei Chelichev at lunch. And so I brought a Pinot Gris and Lynn brought a Pinot Noir, and he was very complimentary on both, and it was kind of, another moment of pinching myself. It was pretty cool.
He was a big supporter of Oregon wine.
He was a big supporter. Ed King really helped move the needle nationally. I think he was, these, I'm overusing the word, but these seminal moments, these, Domaine Drouin coming to Oregon in '88, King Estate in '92, other outside interests from outside of the country, some Californians coming in and jumping around a lot, but the big ones were then Kendall Jackson coming in. All of a sudden it was like, holy crap, there was a land grab. And that just added more and more validity to Oregon. King Estate, getting back to my point there, was really, they were a big deal. They helped put Pinot Gris on the map. They had money behind them. They were very good at marketing. Their packaging was tight. Great wines. So, yeah, helped elevate all of us. So 5 years at Hinman Vineyards. Harvest of 1995, my fifth vintage there. Sunday morning around 9 a.m. I got a call in the lab at Hinman. It's Kevin Chambers, general manager at Willamette Valley Vineyards. I'm like, this is really weird. What's wrong? Well, their winemaker died the night before, Dean Cox. So I think it was October 28th, 1995, I believe. And Dean had an enlarged heart. I knew Dean, great guy. I think he had 5 kids. And young guy, he died in his sleep. And Kevin said, hey, we need some help. Can you come consult? And I said, sure, I'd love to do it. I'd done some of that before. And so Reader's Digest version is, I'd go up there every week or two, and in 9 months they hired me after telling them, no, I'm not interested. It's just like, this is a monster out of control. With all due respect, but I mean, they were growing fast. They had a lot going on. It was a size 12 foot and a size 10 shoe, and I saw that. I'm an efficiency freak. Logistics are really important. Plan your work to plan. Nobody likes a shit show, right? And it costs people money, it burns people out, people get hurt, and they're just like, I see what's going on here. And they said, look, we're gonna make the improvements that you're suggesting for process flow and staffing and all that. And I said, all right, I'm on board. So I started making the wines in '96. Wow. So I went from being, very still type A, but very controlling, because my name, my reputation, my name wasn't on the brand. Well, maybe as a winemaker, but I mean, financially, I didn't have any stake in anything until I started Dobbes Family Estate in 2002. So prior to that, I had my pinch points, right? So for instance, at Hinman, nobody added any, I had a great staff. I mean, for 5 years, we made a lot of wine there. Exported Pinot Noir to Sweden, which was a big deal. Lots and lots of Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, some other stuff. Nobody ever added anything to the must or the wine except me, because that was, somebody's gonna screw up on a measurement or grab, tartaric instead of sulfur or something like that. It was gonna be me. And that worked really well until I got to Willamette. It was like, oh boy. we did, I don't know, I think 1,600 tons my first year in 96. I was still living in Eugene, so I used my dad's fifth-wheel trailer and parked it up above the winery and came down the hill every morning and took a shower and had my coffee and went to work. It was pretty cool. It was intense. I had a great assistant winemaker, Travis. That was another assistant winemaker, Forrest Klafke. And lots to say about him. He was a hell of a hard worker, great winemaker, really dedicated. He passed away from cancer later. So there was 3 of us in a row as winemakers. I'm the only one that's still alive. It was kind of freaky. Anyway, so I learned to manage people, process. I put standard operating procedures in effect. Everyone had their role. They knew what their role was. And it worked really well. Like 1,600 tons. It was a lot of wine. And then through 2001, we had more grapes. Everyone had more grapes than there was tanks to put them in, so we were fermenting in bins and all that. And I was going through some life changes at the time also. A 9.5-year marriage, and that was coming to an end. And so it was like, all right, well, maybe it's time to look at other stuff. And so I started doing some consulting for Tory Moore and for a California company that was up here making Pinot Gris. And that lasted for a couple of years. And then the board at Willamette Valley Vineyards said, it's them or us. Okay, it's you. And then finished out another year there. And at that point, then I said, all right, well, I'm going to start my own company. And over all the years, people had said, hey, are you ever going to start your own winery? I'm like, no, I'm not. So a lot of work, a lot of capital, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen it all. But it was just time to jump in. So I did it and started Dobbes Family Estate in 2002.
Before we get to that, I have a question about Willamette Valley. You refer to Willamette Valley Vineyards in your biography as wine graduate school for you. I'm curious.
Yes, it was. Thank you. It's the first time I had to manage so many tons, different varietals, so many people, running 24 hours a day, and report to a board of directors. So for me, it was definitely graduate school. So the financial end of it, because I'd really never dealt with that much. So I had to report to the board, which wasn't always easy. Tell them why this is, that is, and report on the wines. And then manage just this whole juggernaut. It was graduate school for sure. Yeah. And then that was the reason to jump off and start Dobbes Family Estate and Wine by Joe. Because I had all that basis underneath me. I was scared to death. I mean, I was crazy scared to death. I didn't know which end it was up, but I just did it. I'd gotten divorced. I didn't have a pot to pee in. And here I am starting my own company. It was like, what am I doing? But you say, well, life changes and we're in place and I'm just going to put my head down and go. And I did.
What were the first key steps?
First key steps, a lot of prayer. Talk to a bank and procure a facility. And so Tualatin Estate was owned by Willamette Valley Vineyards. So in, I think it was 96 or 97, they acquired Tualatin Estate. And boy, so many things I've forgotten about. I was then asked, okay, what do we do with this facility? Well, what about the equipment, managing the fruit and all that? And I took a hard look at it and I said, close down the facility and bring all the grapes to Salem. That makes the most sense. And that's what we did, and it worked well. Little did I know, I was going to start my own winery. And Tualatin Estate was available. So I made an offer to lease the winery. I made a bunch of capital improvements. There were a bunch of tanks there. I had to bring in different power, or not different power, but just really up the game, patch the holes in the roof and things like that. And I started making wine up there in 2006. Did custom winemaking also. So unlike a lot of people that start wineries, they've made money elsewhere. They come in with either investors or, a small, for the old Sorry about the best way to make a small fortune in the wine business is start with a big one. I mean, you know, so people coming in with other monies to start the company, I had $50,000 to my name. And that was from consulting work and working at Willamette Valley Vineyards, and I was really starting over. So I got a $250,000 equipment loan from Silicon Valley Bank. I used $250,000 of it. Didn't use the other 25. Invested in equipment, got some customers, and boom, I did 500 tons in year one. We were profitable. So juicing Pinot Gris and shipping it, custom winemaking, hired, let's see, Gretchen Bach, who was my assistant at Willamette Valley Vineyards. She's a dynamo, a real talent. And so I hired her, and she ended up becoming my general manager at Dobbes, and now doing a great job at Benton Lane. So she worked for me for 17 years at Dobbes, and I had other long-term clients at Dobbes, which was, you know, what I started in '02, up until Tualatin Estate. Within 7 years, we were the second largest producer of wine in the state of Oregon. Went from 0 to 3,000 plus tons in 7 years. It was crazy.
That is insane.
It was insane. I surrounded myself with some really great people, some good talent. I knew how to manage them. I gave them a leash, but I kept a tight leash. One of my long-term employees at Dobbes for 17 years and several years at Willamette Valley Vineyards was Gretchen. She said, you know, I'm a control freak. And I said, well, maybe I am, but, you know, I'm driven for quality, efficiency. My name's on the label, and guess what? My name's on the loan for the bank. So if you reverse roles with me, you might be referred to as a control freak as well. I don't know. But to me, it was imperative. And so I just surrounded myself with some great people. We had the right tools, and we had 52,000 square feet. Still do. I own half the company. So, you know, I took on some partners in 2012. 2016 was my last full year of running the company and controlling all winemaking and vineyard and all that. So it was a lot. It was a lot. I mean, I joke with people, you had to work eight days a week, right? I mean, travel internationally to promote the wines, wine club, this, that, dinners. It was incredibly demanding. And I'm skipping over a whole lot. But then again, I hit this point where it was like, okay, it's time to, I took on some partners, I said in 12. In 17, they essentially bought half the company. They were running the company, and I said, all right, well, it's time to go do something else. And so we took 2 years off, my wife Patricia and myself, and we bought this oasis in 18. So it's pretty cool here. The folks that own the place, were leasing the grapes to A to Z. So in 17, and so we moved in 18, fall of 18, watching the grapes get picked and going somewhere else, and I wasn't making wine. So it was the first time since 1985 that I'd never made wine. And for me, it was, I started a mobile bottling company. I had another custom winemaking business. It was more bulk wine and a few, Airbnb rental, which we still have. And so I had other businesses to look at and for income, and I took 2 years off. And it was an amazing reprieve to just stand back, look at the industry, look at what I had done, tasted my wines, tasted my peers' wines, and decide what's my next step. So Greg and Ann Cost, there's always a story here. So Iterum, the Latin word that means again, afresh, once more. We went full circle from making over 200,000 cases of wine to about 2,000 cases. Chardonnay, bubbles and still, Pinot Noir, bubbles and still, and then Sauvignon Blanc. And Greg and Ann Cost, in my days at Dobbes, were custom winemaking clients of mine. And so I made wine for them for about 4 or 5 years. Got to know them really well. We hung out here, we partied with them. Patricia and I actually went to their wedding. in Portland, and just really grew to love them, and they hired me to make their wines, and it was really successful for about 4 or 5 years, and then they went through some life changes. This estate then got sold in 2013, and then we bought it in 2018. So when it was sold, there was clone 114 and 115 Pinot Noir that was planted here in 2000, about 6.5 acres. And we made Pinot Noir for Greg and Ann out of this fruit at Dobbes. Then they went a separate direction out of the wine business, and we leased it at Dobbes and made wine from here. And I remember Greg and Ann saying, "You guys should buy this place from us." So fast forward, going full circle, here we are, bought this in 2018. The owners, just between Greg and Ann and us buying it, planted Chardonnay, 4 acres, of one clone 76 and 548, which are the 2 clones I would have planted myself. And that was in 16, and then 21 we planted Sauvignon Blanc. My passion project. And that brings us kind of to current day, really.
So we back up for a second and talk about Dobbes, and you mentioned the rapid growth from zero to huge pretty quickly. Tell me about scaling wine at that size, and about like the kind of the custom wine work you were doing. How does it all kind of meld together into growing the business the way you did?
Well, the only way that we could grow, the only way I could really finance what we did, I mean, I guess, you always kind of had the idea to go big or go home, right? I mean, I was consulting for Tory Moore, and then made my first wines at Tory Moore. Guess I forgot about that part. That was a good experience. But then leveraging the custom winemaking for the cash flow to buy the equipment, lease the facilities, making wine up in Tualatin, and then that was, 2002, 2003, 3 and 4, something like that. And then we leased the large facility in Dundee, and then closed down Tualatin Estate. Excuse me. So then ended up with like 54,000 square feet. So there was this opportunity, and the industry was growing. Like A to Z started about the same time that Wine by Joe did. I guess I didn't mention Wine by Joe. That was a huge success from day one. I mean, we went from 0 to 50,000 cases overnight. We were chosen as top #1 hot brand of the year, Wine Business Monthly, and that was probably in 2017, 2018. So the custom winemaking helped fund all of that, and there was just this opportunity out there. Here's grapes, here's unsold grapes. Here's an opportunity to buy low and sell high, or get grapes in the door that were unsold, make wine, and then sell it in bulk, and then the grower and I would split the check. So it was a win-win. There's just no way we could have done what we did without the custom winemaking. And that grew quickly, of course. I mean, as I said, we were the #2 producer of wine in the state of Oregon. The majority of that, honestly, at that time. In 2009, when we got to that point, was custom winemaking, right? So Dobbes is, the high-end luxury label, and then Wine by Joe, more the value price. And then we had another label called Jovino, which was restaurant-only Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris. Lots of irons in the fire. Remember my banker looking at me once, he says, Joe, there's a time when your company outgrows you. I'm like, yeah, no shit. It's like, where are we going here, right? So I took on the partners, Bacchus Capital, to help me grow the company to the point where we could launch it and sell it. We're still working on that. So got a great team there. Some of them worked with me for years, still are there. And how do I, just all these life experiences, managing people and systems and putting this all together is what helped grow Wine by Joe. We actually had a north facility and a south facility. So Wine by Joe was the high flow facility where we did the vast majority, machine picked equipment, 250 tons in a day was like child's play. It worked really, really well. And we made good wine, right? I mean, it got a lot of recognition. And then Dobbes was the, 2 tons an hour, hand sort, small lots, 50 to 350 cases or whatever. Took on some really significant clients for high-end Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris, and high-end Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris for, well, value-priced, which really moved the needle. For the industry as well. I mean, people would know who the brands are. But, yeah, still work with them.
So between your work at Willamette Valley Vineyards and your work, obviously, with your own company, you made a lot of wine at a time. You learned how to make scale wine. Tell me about how do you make good wine in a quantity like that?
It takes a lot of discipline. It takes the right tools. And by tools, I mean you can't turn and burn tanks, right? You know, with a value priced like Wine by Joe Pinot Noir, it's get it in a tank. And any other value priced Pinot Noir, if they tell you that they're not turning and burning tanks, they've got a lot of money and a lot of space, or they're not telling you the truth, right? So you got to, turn a tank 2.5 times during harvest to get through all that. So to make really high quality wine on a large, what's large, honestly? I mean, there are Oregon wineries that are making a large amount of wine. They're making a lot more wine than people think they are. They're doing an amazing job. So they have the winemaking, they have the fruit. They're probably controlling a lot of the fruit. They've got the tools. They have the time. They put the attention towards it, and they don't cut corners. It's expensive, especially with Pinot Noir, because we're harvesting fruit that's at lower tons per acre. It's not, you don't have that larger volume. Honestly, there are things, with Dobbes, and I don't regret it, like indigenous fermentations, malolactic and primary, yeast. I never did indigenous fermentations because there was too many things going on, and to do indigenous or natural yeast, whatever you want to call it, that comes in from the vineyard, you never know what that is. You have to control it. You have to babysit it. You have to be on top of it to get it from pre-fermentation, cold soak, to primary fermentation immediately, or things can go sideways on you. You make some pretty good vinegar. And that's just somewhere I didn't want to go. So we used commercial yeast. I did a lot. I actually had my own yeast strains that I brought back from Europe with me. One from Germany and one from Burgundy. I had code names for them. Unnamed laboratory in Oregon. And so we used those, but I built it up and I pitched it into the fermenter, right? It wasn't just heat it up, let it go across your fingers. And so I never went there on that. To do that on a larger scale, it's difficult. It's really difficult. You don't always succeed because sometimes things go sideways. You've got live yeast, bacteria, perishable product. There's lots going on, and it's a lot to manage. So I just chose not to go there. However, in Iterum, everything we're doing is indigenous yeast, indigenous malolactic bacteria, and a few other techniques that just kind of maybe having a couple of years off were born out of just actually being able to think and reflect and become kind of recharged. And it's like, all right, where's my new direction? And that's why I say I think that I'm making the most exciting wines in my career right now. Part of that is because indigenous. I'm working with amazing vineyards, some of the vineyards that we call old friends. So Orchard House Estate, this is our 21 acres here in the middle of the Eola Hills, where I've coined this center of the hill the 90210 of the Eola Hills. The west side, the Eola Bench. So that's the Eola Bench would be analogous to the center of the hill in Burgundy, where you find the best vineyards. Indigenous fermentations, I think, have allowed me to make wines that are more expressive and more variation from a sense of place, or maybe not using indigenous ferments. You got more homogeneous wines. They're good wines, but not as different as I think what we're able to do now. But I'm making, 1,000 cases of Pinot. The other 1,000 cases is other varietals and bubbles. Just experience, slowing down, smaller amounts. Again, having all the right tools, though.
So you had multiple businesses with your name on them. I'm curious what it feels like stepping away from that.
It's difficult. It's difficult to look at your name on the building or on the label, maybe the label change and you don't like the look of it. Psst, ouch. We all have an opinion, right? But just, different direction. All right, fine. My partners are running the company. There's different people there. They need to express themselves, and things are never the same. But, they're doing an amazing job. The wines are great. But it's difficult, yeah. So over time, now that I've focused more on Iterum, and I'm proud of what's going on with Dobbes and Wine by Joe, but really on a daily basis, this is where my thoughts and energies are. So I'm proud of what I did there. I'm proud of the team. Yeah.
Tell me about the first fall without a harvest.
Fall of 17. I hiked Mary's Peak with my daughter on my birthday, October 3rd, and saw Mount Hood and the Pacific Ocean at the same time. Well, not the same time, but it turned 180 degrees, right? It was epic. It was a great father-daughter time, Amelia Rose. And it was weird, right? But it was good for me. Yeah, so 2 years off, 17 and 18, not making wine. 17, we were still living in a different place in West Salem. And then, as I say, we bought this place in fall of 18. So I didn't know where we were going to go. I didn't know what the next step was, really. It was like I had other businesses, and I was focused on those, which grew quickly. Leslie Roth, an old high school friend of mine, her husband founded, or father-in-law founded Roth's Markets, so local person. She was a real estate agent, and I knew of this place. And I said, hey, Leslie, let's go look at the old Orchard Heights property. And we looked at it, and boom, we bought it. Maybe I'm the only one that was foolish enough to buy it, but I've run into a couple handfuls of people who said, oh yeah, we looked at that place. I love it. It's like, yeah, I bought it. But for me, it was kind of like coming home. My son caught his first fish in the spring up above the property. An old friend of mine showed me this place in 1990. He knew Greg Cost at the time. He didn't know Ann. The house was a lot different looking. They remodeled in 05, 06. And yeah, we kind of came home in a way. So, Yosemite Hills, first head winemaking job was 10 minutes away in Rick-Riel. Still buying some of their Sauvignon Blanc now. So I made Sauvignon Blanc there in 89, 90. And in 21, I started working with it again. So it was nice to have 2 years off to just reflect and figure out, okay, where are we going? What's the name of the brand? This is a really simple label. Can't imagine how much work went into that. And even the name of, my daughter said, she's going to get mad at me, but Iterum sounded like Imodium. Like, okay, well, we're selling a laxative, a liquid laxative. But really, it's the name is the brand. Again, afresh once more, it really describes what I did going full circle. Getting back to basics, organic farming for the first time, making wines differently. So it was really nice to just reflect and figure out who I was and where I was going. And here we are, 40 years into the business.
So why the passion around Sauvignon Blanc?
I just love Sancerre. I appreciate domestic Sauvignon Blanc and New Zealand to a lesser extent, but just the vivid freshness and the steeliness of Sancerre, and I'm a fruit freak. So my focus on all my wines is fruit, 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 true varietal character. It bugs me when I stick my nose in a glass of Sauvignon Blanc or Gewürztraminer. It's like, these are wines with a lot of terpenes, and they should be very expressive, and it's like, I'm not sure what this is, right? That's Joe Dobbes. That's just who and what I am. So focus on fruit, mouthfeel, and texture. Did I say mouthfeel? I like a lot of mouthfeel, but balance. So bigger isn't necessarily better, but if you can have something that's got a bigger, more full mouth with really good fruit and really good acidity, boom, it's a trifecta. It's a grand slam. And that's really what my goal is. I want to make delicious wines that make your mouth happy when they go in there, You don't have to think, well, in 3 years this is going to be enjoyable. And it's like, I want it enjoyable now, and I want it to reward people with time. And I truly believe that you can make wines that do both. That's what I strive for. So an orchestra in the mouth. The old friends give me an opportunity then, as I said, Sauvignon Blanc. So the benefit of having 2 years to do other things and then think about a new brand, where do I want to go? What do I want to be when I grow up, right? We've got Orchard, what we called Orchard House Estate, because at the time we had the 2 houses, I still do, the one's a rental, and my daughter had said, well, which house, Dad? And, the Orchard House. So actually my daughter came up with Orchard House Estate, which is our LLC and the name of the vineyard. Obviously Iterum, the brand. And it's like, hey, where do I want to go? What about all these vineyards that I worked with over the years? The old friends, right? Like Simonet Vineyard, Ken Wright introduced me to in 1989. We're doing a special 40th anniversary 6-pack of Simonet. So Pomard and Vadensville and the blend of the two. It's probably our most favorite old friend that we sell to club members, Full Circle Society. Eola Springs, third owner, Tom Simonet. Vern and Pam Tupper were introduced me in '89 by Ken Wright, then Corky Isselhart and Tom Simonet, and then Eola Springs, a couple of doctors that are friends of mine still, Judy Jordan, and now Northwest Wine Company, and working with Clone 667. Then Quailhurst Estate and Arlen up in Salem, and then old friend Sauvignon Blanc. There might be a new friend or two coming along. You never know. But I'm trying to be disciplined and keep it very focused and not try to be all things to all people. Just be focused. Put the needle in the bullseye, have fun. So I'm really enjoying this business plan. It's great. Direct to consumer primarily. We distribute to Virgin Islands, Norway, and Tennessee. I know that's a weird combination. What's that?
Did you draw those out of a hat?
Pretty much, yeah. Just opportunities that fell in my lap. A club member that works for the distributor in Tennessee. Actually, at the time, he didn't tell me he worked for a distributorship, but he recruited me. I said, okay, cool. Norway, I met a friend of a friend, actually a local grape grower. He's from Norway, and met him at Passion for Pinot in California, World of Pinot in California. Virgin Islands, a friend that had a distributor that was looking for some high-end wines, and they came here and we blew their socks off, and they're selling a lot of wine. Oh, by the way, we go to the Virgin Islands to help market, and Norway to help market, and places where we want to go. So it's a vocation, avocation, it's a lifestyle. Dominique Lafon was here the other day. Oh, here you go. Here's a full circle story. He and Thomas Sauve, who is the winemaker at Lingua Franca, are starting a new brand. Actually, a couple of new brands from Oregon. And lo and behold, I'm selling Chardonnay to Dominique Lafon. 40 years later.
Wow.
36 years later, something like that. So I worked with him in '88. Now he's in my vineyard. And he was out here the other day, and he says, Joe, this looks more like a hobby. I said, yeah. Well, it's a hobby that's a business. It's got to pay, right? So, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then we sell a little bit of Chardonnay to another very, very high-end Oregon winery. So it's pretty cool. Make wine from some of my Pinot Noir for a client or two, and then we, make the rest from our estate here, 114, 115. Bottle those separately so you can geek out and look at you got the land and the hand. The land is the same. The hand is a variable, but I farm them the same. I pick them on the same day, same oak regime, and people get to just really look at the genetics of the wine, mostly red fruit, blue fruit, right? And they're split on that, what they really like. So yeah, people can come here and try the Orchard House Estate wines and the Old Friends. So we can throw 7 different Pinots at people. 2 Chardonnays, 2 Sauvignon Blancs. Yeah.
You talked earlier about kind of a different approach to winemaking, being able to make it the wine at this scale. You're able to use yeast differently and approach differently. Tell me how else approaching a brand that's this small and this kind of intimate compared to what you've done before. How else has it sort of changed your approach, either in the winemaking side or anywhere else?
Going from large to what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I get to think more about my wines. Where am I going with them? What am I doing with them? Instead of doing, because I had so much going on. I mean, okay, the control freak here, right? But somebody had to be, if I'm the guy making the wine, my name's on the label at Dobbes, Wine by Joe, I contracted all the growers, I communicated with the growers, I had good help sampling, and then I made the picking decision and stylistic winemaking, and a great team. Everybody knew what they needed to do, but only to hear, and then we would talk about something else. Here, I do it all myself. I mean, I've got one guy that works for me during harvest, Joey. He's like 2.5 people during harvest. The guy is a whirling dervish. He's amazing. He comes in right before harvest, helps me get organized, and we do it. And then we bring in a couple other people to help sort grapes and punch down and all that. But Joey's amazing. I mean, he'll dump grapes, run and wash the bin, stack it up, go get it. I mean, he's just all over the place. And we can do 3-4 days in a row and hardly even talk to each other. It's like this orchestra. That's my world now. Like I was at the winery earlier today, topping wines. It's getting close to middle of July, thinking more about harvest, overseeing what's going on in the vineyard. In my old days, I didn't make vineyard farming decisions so much. For our Seabreeze vineyard, I worked with Results Partners, and I kind of left it to them. Looked at the budgets, what are we doing, et cetera. But here, I'm intimately involved in it. I walked the vineyard this morning at 5:30. It was beautiful as the sun was up.
You mentioned innovative winemaking, some things you're doing. Tell me about things you consider to be sort of innovative ways of winemaking.
I don't know if I can tell you all of them.
Well, anything that's available, anything that you feel like chatting about.
No, I'm kidding. Dry ice. I use a lot of dry ice. Dry ice can be used to cool down a fermenter, but if you go beyond that to even cooler temperatures, you get what's called cryo extraction. So you get, I think, some of the cell structures are cracked and opened up. Deeper, softer wines, more voluminous, which is really my style. And you don't need, with heat, you get tannin and you also get color in Pinot Noir. And so you don't need to get the fermentation as hot. You get softer, sweeter tannins instead of some of the harder ones. That's something very different that I do now than before. And as I said, indigenous, all the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay is 16 months before it gets bottled, 15, 16. So Pinot Noir is, basically 15 months in barrel, and then it gets racked. It's unfiltered, or not filtered, more accurately, goes to bottle. Chardonnay is about 11.5 months in barrel, and then it goes to stainless steel, all on the gross lees, so sur lie. And that gets bottled at the same time as Pinot Noir. Oak regime has changed, so I'm using acacia wood. So French oak and acacia wood on Chardonnay, about 12-15%. And acacia gives honey and honeyed characters and helps elevate the fruit. French oak is sugar and spice and everything nice. So nutmeg, cinnamon, clove, some bacon fat, some cardamom, right? So it's like this plethora of spices and sweet characters. Acacia doesn't add so much of that by any means. And say, for instance, Sauvignon Blanc, it's 100% acacia. So stylistically, I'm pushing Sauvignon Blanc towards Sancerre. And I have to say, with this past vintage of 24, I think we nailed it. So you have that minerality somehow. By the way I make the wine, no malolactic, acacia wood, about 25% new. So it really melds with the wine beautifully, and it's this synergistic thing. And I do the same thing with Chardonnay. So about 35% new French oak and then 12 to 15 acacia. So those are big, big changes for me. Pinot Noir, indigenous yeast, malolactic, same oak regimes, same aging standard that I did with Dobbes and others that I made wine for. Sparkling. First bottle of sparkling I made was 2019. I got in the business in 1985. So when I was working for others, at Dobbes I ran 17 years, and so the 17 years prior, nobody was really thinking that much about sparkling wine in Oregon. Now it's a big deal. In my days at Dobbes, 2002 on, we did some forced carbonated stuff, but never any methylchampenois. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to delve into making sparkling wine. 2019, I had some good hand holding, but it's a new paradigm for me, for sure. I mean, we're not making a lot. It's 100 cases of each at the most. This is the first Rosé of Pinot 2020, and then first Blanc de Blanc was 2019. So we're making each ongoing 100% from the estate. And I'm loving it. Bone dry, Brut Nature. So Brut Nature is 3 grams or less. Residual or sugar added back in the dosage. They're bone dry. And the way we're able to do that is just get that mouthfeel and that texture, 42 plus months early in tirage, and then bottle without any sugar. So I've just had so many sparkling wines, and a couple times, often-ish, I think, a little bit too much sugar. So it's my brand. If you don't like it, I got 100 cases. We've gotten great reviews. So that's new. And another wine that we make is a late harvest Sauvignon Blanc. The first time I made that was in 2000 at Eola Hills Wine Cellars from the Oak Grove Vineyard. And so this is Sauterne-inspired French oak. It's delectable, delicious. Delectable, that's delicious and delectable together.
Coining words.
Delectable, yeah, delicious. So that's the overview. So the changes, new things, oak regime or barrel regime for Chardonnay, indigenous yeast, Sauvignon Blanc, and then the bubbles. So the bubbles keep me awake at night. Especially when we're building up the starters and the Pied de Couve and all. It's like, oh crap. Nobody wants a couple 100 cases of sparkling cuvee and tirage that didn't ferment. It happens.
It's a lot of things in go.
There's a lot of things. Yeah.
So let's talk about Pinot Noir for just a moment. You have obviously a long history with Pinot Noir in Oregon. Tell me about from nose all the way through. Tell me about what's a great Oregon Pinot Noir? What are the characteristics?
Fruit. Oregon, what defines us in Oregon is freshness of acidity, and with that acidity in the lower pHs, cooler growing region still. Even though it's warmer now, we still get all this fruit. So I love seeing beautiful fruit. I don't know how to make a reductive wine. I mean, I couldn't do it if I tried. Well, I suppose I could, but I've made very few wines that are reductive. So reductive would mean, wines that are more of the earth or tighter wound, and reduction versus oxidation. So you need to be somewhere in the middle. You don't want to make an oxidized wine. And reductive wines, right? So it's methodology, fermentation, use of sulfur, vineyard, just technique. I mean, my wines are what they are. It's who I am and what I've produced. Oh, great Oregon Pinot Noir, yeah. So, some of them will be reductive, some are beautiful and fresh, some take a little while to open up. Depends on the clone, the sub-AVA, the winemaker, the vintage, and all that. So, good fruit, balance is so important. You can have a lighter wine that's got great balance, and you can have a bigger wine that's got great balance, right? So in the vintage variation that we've had, really big years like 2008, 2004, 2009, high alcohol, more tannin, more structure, you can still have balance there without, drinking a martini or something that doesn't resemble Pinot Noir, right? It's a lot of tannin. Judicious amount of oak. I mean, some vintages, some styles can handle more oak. So I'm looking for balance, freshness. I'm a freak about what's technically correct. For me, I'm not a fan of Brettanomyces. I've heard winemakers say, oh, I don't mind a little Brett. I'm like, okay, well, unless you sterile filtered your wine, you get a little Brett today, you're gonna have a lot tomorrow. Probably, right? So maybe a little of that rose petal or leather. I've seen wines that people raved over that, in my opinion, were just spoiled wines that I would have never bottled, quite frankly. This all goes back to that quality thing. And it's like, okay, if you don't like my style of wines, you're not going to buy them. We're not for everybody, and nobody else is for everyone either. But when I see a wine that, to me, is technically not sound, I have a hard time with it. Because, I never went to UC Davis or Fresno State or had any formal wine training, but I worked with some amazing people who have a great chemistry, biology degree background, and I'm looking for technically correct wines. One could say, well, those are boring. Some of the most amazing wines I drank from Burgundy were not boring wines, and they were technically correct, and they didn't smell like a Brett bomb either. So, prophylactic winemaking, preventative winemaking, so to speak, is like something that I definitely practice. I haven't filtered a wine in years, except, white wine. Wines with balance, wines that pique your interest, wines with a sense of place.
You mentioned that before starting Iterum, you started a mobile bottling company. Tell us about the genesis of that.
Forever an entrepreneur. It's a mixed blessing. So Dundee Mobile Bottlers, I started that in 2017. And the reason for that was I saw a place for another mobile bottling company in Oregon with some advanced technology, which I went after. And we put together the mothership of all mobile bottling lines with pop-outs on it. We could bottle tirage wines, so, with a crown cap. We could do screw cap, we could do ROPP. We bottled juice, we bottled spirits, semi-sparkling spirits, lots of wine, a lot of tirage wine. Force carbonated, we could force carbonate. So we could show up, and we did this, hand me the hose, we're bottling Chardonnay, still wine. Now we're bottling sparkling wine, and we can put it up to 5 atmospheres of CO2 into that bottle and have a product with a cork or a crown cap at the end of the day that they could sell. It's amazing technology, amazing technology. We killed it for a number of years, and then something called COVID came along. And we killed it then, too, because my competitors, they couldn't do what we were doing, or what they could do that we were doing, cork finished or just crown cap or screw caps. They retracted. They were mature companies. They could afford to do it. And so they didn't bottle as much, or didn't even bottle for a while. And so we went after it. Then something called, what I refer to as the great retirement of 30-year-olds happened. And it was real. I mean, we couldn't find people to work. It's hard work. It's dedicated work. And we weren't the only ones. I mean, the other mobile bottling companies. So, people were trying to poach other people's employees. I got just reamed by somebody that, he tried to poach my employee, but when I tried to poach back, that didn't work. So it was a one-way street, I guess, but that wasn't fun. So long story short, I ended up folding the company and selling it. We just couldn't staff it. We tried, and it was really frustrating. I wasn't a mature company. I wasn't an owner-operator. And that's what I was competing against was, long-time mature company, kind of the Xerox of Oregon mobile bottling. If you're going to mobile bottle, you can call so-and-so. Then there were a couple newcomers, and they're also owner-operators. And it was like, okay, I had other entities. I had this going in 2019, started making wine in 2019. And there are only so many things you can do. And, I could have done it if that's all I was doing. But I had a really talented guy, Joby Alloway, and he kind of looked at me one day and said, Joe, this is the one I was hired to do, to operate on a daily basis, because we had 2 mobile bottling lines. And so he was overseeing the staff, making sure the trailer was here or there, actually hauling them with the tractor trailer. And when we decided to take that on, and it just became too much. We just couldn't find enough people underneath, so I got out of it. Now I'm focused on wine. Wine again, went full circle. If I were to redo that, there was a smaller trailer that if we could have procured that, and I tried, but we couldn't get it to operate correctly. And we learned later, and we suspected that the filler spouts were swapped out on that machine, and the company that sold it to a local guy never admitted to it. And I wish we had that today, because I now hire Castile to bottle my wines, and they have a small trailer. It's ideal. They do a great job, great people. And I could keep a couple people busy doing that, servicing smaller wineries. Or like, gee, we had an overrun, or my glass didn't show up, can you come in and help? But if is a big word. Yeah. So that was my foray into mobile bottling. Learned a lot, made a lot, lost a lot. So, still breathing.
Let's kind of zoom out for a second and talk about the industry. And we talk about your kind of initial impressions of it when you got into it. Let's talk about what it is today and
where are we today?
The growth and evolution you've seen.
So 40 years in the industry, starting in Germany in '85. 17 years running a company that I owned, Dobbes, before I started Iterum again. 17 years working for others. Climate change, global warming, whatever we call it. I'm not going to delve into what the cause of that is, because I don't think anybody really knows, although they claim they do. We've had warming and cooling and ice ages that melted over eons. It is what it is. We're dealing with it today. I mean, it's where we're living. We had temperatures here on this patio of 116, 117, summer of 21, which is the spring that we planted Sauvignon Blanc, so that was tough. Did a lot of hand watering. People ask me this all the time. Winemakers dinner, chatting at the table at dinner, whatever. Impromptu, how is this affecting you? And my answer is, I love it, quite frankly. Maybe not everybody shares that view, but if you think about it, I mean, when I started in the industry and prior, I mean, they were harvesting well in October. I remember October of 2010, we harvested grapes starting October 18th. Boy, you talk about nerve-wracking. And the press panned the wines before they were even, into the bottle, and then you ask winemakers their favorite vintage. A lot of times it was like 2010. But the earlier season, I mean, we're going to be a week earlier this year, I think, than last year in harvest. Okay, so a week less of summer, right? We jump into it, but we're not worrying about birds. We're not worrying about rainstorms. I mean, last tough vintage I can really think of was 2013. That was really tough. I would have hated to be a new winemaker then. Warm weather, some rain, the berries pop, they heal over, some more rain, the berries pop, fruit flies get in there. A lot of protein in your wines. We'll go to that one. And it's just less challenging now. The grapes ripen. We can pick where we want them. They're not ripening in August. They're ripening now in September, still into October. I mean, this is the last vineyard we harvest, and it's been, since 19, maybe a couple times in late September. But for the most part, it's October. Less disease pressure, less birds, less challenges in getting your fruit picked, because everybody would wait until the day before the next rainstorm is coming. Everyone wants to pick. And then the rain would come in a day or two earlier, and it's like, okay, stop, don't pick, please don't come pick. I want to reschedule. And so just the logistics of it was crazy. I mean, we were dealing with over 50 vineyards at Dobbes, plus our own vineyard. And we did 100 different lots of Pinot Noir. You think about managing all that is tough. I would say sometimes he who has the most influence and friends and tools gets their grapes picked. In other words, hey, Mario, can I get my grapes picked, next Wednesday? And it's like, no, I don't have any bins. I don't have a truck. I'll bring you bins. I'll haul the grapes myself. That's how you get them picked. So a lot of relationships like that. Never burn your bridges. But yeah, I'm not planting Cabernet anytime soon. I don't know of anybody else in the Willamette Valley that's talking about it. Maybe do, but it's not going to happen in my lifetime. I hope that our AVAs here that are well known, the wines don't change markedly. I think they're going to be more consistent. I think the same's probably happened in Burgundy, for sure. California used to say every year is a vintage year. Well, maybe we're making wines that are a vintage year every year. It's too early to say. I mean, 2019 was a challenge. We couldn't get our grapes picked when we wanted to. It was my first vintage. They had to hang out in the rain for 10 days. That was tough. A lot of birds, a lot of berries fell on the ground. Maybe if it was my first year doing this again, I would have got them picked earlier. But there's still going to be challenges like that with weather. Mother Nature's always in control. I guess that's my synopsis on it.
What other changes have you seen in Oregon in your time here?
I can't really think of anything. Maybe probably some complacency from the standpoint of a vineyardist or a winemaker. We're kind of getting used to this. And are we doing leaf removal in the vineyard just in case the rain comes, or we got to be concerned about botrytis? We're going to remove leaves late this week when it cools down a bit. There's other reasons to remove leaves, so sunlight into the grapes, more flavors. But if you go overboard or do it at the wrong time, you got sunburn. And sunburned Pinot Noir doesn't taste good. Been there and made it. Lose a lot of crop. Yeah, so maybe just a sense, a little bit of complacency. We're farming organically, which, gee, I don't know if I could have farmed organically years ago, right? It would have been suicide mission. Or you bring out the sprayer at night. Covert spraying. I've heard that's happened. I don't know, not in Oregon. I don't know, I'm just being silly here, but I can't really think of anything else.
About sort of on an industry-wide level, even beyond climate, just like how you've seen the industry grow. What are the
over and above, temperatures and climate, et cetera, how I've seen the industry grow? Oh my God! I mean, in the early '80s, we were in the '80s doing panel tastings, thumbs up, thumbs down. That doesn't happen anymore. We're more of a mature industry, still not mature or juvenile, but not infancy anymore. The new players, the money. Holy crap. I mean, there's a new winery being built here, a new winery being built here, and somebody sold their company for $1 bazillion. And, it's tough to compete with, really, where you're a small guy. I've been in the industry forever. I haven't sold my other company. Maybe I'd build a small chateau if and when that happens, but I doubt it. But still, you need to compete with those people, right? I used to make jokes about the limousine going up the hill in Dundee and that wallet just opens up, right? I mean, there's this pomp and circumstance and beautiful facilities, which are good for Oregon, but you got to compete against that, right? So quality, story, how are we unique? What's the other word I want to use? Authenticity, tell your story. You still got to get out there and tell your story, right? I mean, there's a lot of competition. Oregon, so we're getting closer to maturity as an industry. We're still ways off for sure, at least I hope so. Outside money, so the Italians, the French, the Californians, the French again. Bubbles, big change, right? So bubbles is a big deal now. I don't know of anybody selling other than Argyle, a lot of wine, bubbles. Soder's done an amazing job, helped put it on the map, and many others. Andrew, that had Radiant Wine Company, did a great service to Oregon. A protege, a graduate of Argyle, and he put together, it was a great idea. A small mobile bottling company, you could do tirage wine, contract, custom, bubbles making, method champenois, and he just blew the lid off to the point where he just said, hey, no more. Now that's been purchased, right, by Vinovate,
Vinovate,
yep. Brian Weil and his group. I haven't been there since it's been finished, but looked amazing. It's really cool. It's good for Oregon. So that's the next step for Oregon, right? You've got a place that can do bubbles in a bigger way to help people like me out. So we do the tirage bottling literally by hand. We got a hand filler, and my wife and I and an employee and friend would do this. It's 200 cases in a day, not a big deal. Put it in the warehouse and forget about it for a while, and then call up some friends of mine in Southern Oregon I used to bottle for, and have them, riddle it and pop the top and put the cork in it, and there you go. So there's others. Arabilis, right here in the Willamette Hills. Corollary, that's specializing in sparkling only. That's brave. They're doing a great job. It's good for Willamette Hills. I think this is the place, by the way. This is the place to be. And we've got the Van Duzer corridor. We talk about, global warming, climate change. You feel that breeze right now. All these vines are hedged right now, but they all blow uphill because of the coastal winds. And there are mornings I go outside and I can smell the sea breeze. It's really cool. Literally cool. Cooler. We pick later here. We pick Arlen up by Adelsheim in the Chehalem Mountain sub-AVA. Sedimentary soils. We pick that 2.5, 3 weeks before we pick this. It's crazy. Really crazy. Other industry changes. We're seeing some of the luminaries that started the modern era pass away, which is sad. Their children are running, third generations working in wineries. That's pretty cool. Consolidation. We're seeing some wineries now that are not renewing their federal TTB bond to make wine, which I think is a sign of the times where, there's a lot of wineries. Wine overall consumption has been going down. I'm trying to put our finger on why that is. Alcohol in general. The World Health Organization is, working real hard to make sure that we drink less. And to a certain extent, I'm going to editorialize the Oregon Health Authority too. Using some of our own tax dollars to advertise against our industry. And that didn't go over well. Nonetheless, they're still out there. Sign of the times, and younger kids or younger people in their 20s are not drinking like we did, right? We lived to do that, or at least my generation did. It's like, let's go to the beer garden. I got fake ID. You're not 21 yet, but it's different. A lot of things are different. Gosh, what else? Where are we going to be? Where are we going to be in 20 years, 50 years? I don't know. We'll never be what California is, because we don't have the population centers. We're not as big. The Willamette Valley is small, really. There's a lot of areas of the Willamette Valley that are not yet planted that can produce beautiful grapes. Excuse me, it was once said that by a prominent Oregon winemaker that you can't ripen grapes east of the Willamette River. No, that's not true. There's a lot of great vineyard property east of the Willamette River, Salem Hills, great places for Chardonnay. I know of an 80-acre planting up there, only Chardonnay. So, yeah, who would have thought that? 80-acre vineyard of Chardonnay? We couldn't give it away years ago, right? So we went full circle on that. Showing the world that, if you look at red and white Burgundy, I tell people this all the time. The paradigm for Oregon is Burgundy, okay? Alsace, I love Alsace, right? But the reason people came to Oregon was in search of the Holy Grail and the right place to grow Pinot Noir. And Chardonnay, but primarily Pinot Noir. Red and white Burgundy, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Oregon, Willamette Valley. That's why we're here. And we make other varietals really well, but that's what put us on the map. Did I mention something on one?
It's the next big thing I hear.
Yeah, hopefully. In 40 years in the industry, it's crazy. It went by fast. Amazing experiences. I need to have a little wine and sit around with friends to remember all the things that happened that had an influence. I could tell a story of when I was in Germany 1985. So I was learning to speak the language. I was there for, I lived in the basement of a home in Long and Lonesheim where the winery was. And there was a guy by the name of Jürgen Bauch who worked for the parent company of the winery I worked for, Bako Filter Sheets and Fermentation Supplies, huge company, kind of like Scott Labs is. And he had the bedroom next to me, and so we'd hang out a lot. And he went out of town once on business to sell, and he came home a week early. His room had been vacated, and the landlords had sublet his room for a week to somebody else. Well, he wasn't very happy about it. Well, the owners were in Turkey, where I lived, the owners of the place. So the ownership of the winery sent me up for a place to live. They were in Turkey on vacation, and I was hanging out with a Catholic youth group, and we'd go to the pub and drink beer, and I said, oh my God, tell you about what happened. Big, big mistake. Small village of about 2,000 people, so when the family, my landlords came home from vacation in Turkey, the whole village knew what they had done. Oh boy. So I got an eviction notice right away. You got a week to find a place to live. And I'm like, holy crap, what am I going to do? So I'm learning to speak German. I literally went door to door. Hello, guten Tag, ich heiße Joe Dobbes, ich bin Praktikant. I'm an apprentice at a local winery and I need a place to live. Talk about putting your stomach in your mouth. I mean, it was really difficult. Well, long story short, I ended up at Weingut Zimmerman in Long and Lonesheim, right across from the pub. Beautiful winery, big, huge bedroom, big bathtub, the Hof, the open courtyard down below, and it was wonderful. Life got better. Had this beautiful place to live. But I mean, those are just the things, some of the little things that were difficult. Didn't make me a better winemaker, but
Stronger person.
Stronger person for sure. Yeah.
So you're looking back at 40 years right now. You're celebrating your 40th year in the industry. So tell me a little bit about sort of taking stock and celebrating.
Yeah, I just woke up, several months ago and was like, wow, I'm in my 40th year. That's crazy. I mean, honestly, I didn't make wines in 17 or 18, but 40th year in the business and, still own half of Dobbes Family Estate and Wine by Joe, so very vested. And so we're doing a couple of dinners here that are going to be limited seating. I'm actually getting wines from Erbhoff Tesch, from Roumier, from Lafon, Hinman Vineyards, Willamette Valley Vineyards, Imagine Dobbes Family Estate, and Iterum. So we're going to taste wines. I'm not sure we're going to find anything from '85 when I was at Tesch in Germany, but we'll definitely find some of the wines. We will get some wines from '88 when I was in Burgundy. I'm not sure about Oak Cove yet. I need to call Anna about that, '86, '87. So I'm hoping to get as many wines as I can to share with our friends, our customers, and tell the story and just talk shop. So, yeah, should be fun.
So as you look back over a 40-year career so far, tell me about, I guess, the little moments for you. Or what are the things you think back on as either turning points or things that kept you going, or what are the kind of the untold stories?
Yeah, so great question. December of 1983, possibly. I came home for Christmas break to help my dad, and we're out in the back 40 cutting down fir trees that blew down in a windstorm for firewood. We were talking life, and I said, Dad, I'm not sure I really want to try to go to medical school. I think I want to get in the wine business. And he actually planted Markham Hill Vineyards. Gee, there's an oversight, Joe, in 84, 85. So, 83, 84, we planted 20 acres, we the family. And his first vintage was in 88 when I was in Burgundy. But anyway, I said, I don't think I want to go into medicine. I think I want to go into the wine business. And he was very supportive and no pressure to go into medicine. And so that was a pivotal moment to get into the wine business. I would say definitely another pivotal moment, many of them in Burgundy. I mean, just hanging out with Aubert de Villon from Domaine de Loro-Miniconti, drinking 1912 and 1913 Pinot Noirs that Christophe's great-grandfather had made for Christmas dinner, hanging out with Dominique Lafon at the Hospice de Beaune and tasting those amazing wines. All kinds of experiences like that, many in Germany. Another big one, which was a difficult one, was going through a divorce and big job, and it's like, okay, well, what's next? So making that life change, and that was my first going away from being a W-2 employee to owning my own company, and that was in 2002. So that was difficult. It was challenging, but it was also rewarding, because we made money out of year one, and grew the company and had a great team. I had 2 people that worked with me for 17 years. They're still in the industry. They're doing well. Others that were with me for quite a number of years that are still really influential at Dobbes and Wine by Joe and Dundee. Those are probably the big ones. And then just deciding, okay, I had partners at Dobbes and Wine by Joe. What's next? This place came up for sale. I had the other companies, but I wasn't done making wine. I just didn't know what my final act was going to look like. Here it is. We meet so many amazing people in this business, our customers, direct to consumer. I've met winemakers from California. Founder of Pixar Pictures was a guest of ours, and he's a winemaker and very complimentary and telling those stories and talking about Steve Jobs and his relationship with him. I actually met a gentleman who was a test pilot for the Blackbird and the Blackbird.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, in the Air Force.
His SR-71?
Yes. So he was right there with his wife and his daughter. And his daughter said, "Dad, tell him what else you did." He kind of pull it out of him. And he was the person in charge of Saddam Hussein after they caught him. His buddy was one of the guys who went in a rat hole and found him, special forces. So he was put in charge of guarding Saddam Hussein while he was on trial in Iraq. So the Iraqis are trying him. And he had 2 initiatives from the U.S. government. Don't kill him yourself, and don't let him get killed. And there were about 5 or 6 other people that he was also guarding. So this guy sat right here and told me what it was like looking at Saddam Hussein every day, and what it was like when they first captured him, and what he was like, diminished over time. It's like, wow. You just never know who's going to walk in your door. A lot of our customers are friends, just like a Dobbes family estate. So it's a full circle society. The full circle society. Yeah, so we're having fun. It's just working differently, meeting awesome people as we did before, but now it's more of a lifestyle, working lifestyle.
Do you have any moments of doubt along the way?
Every day.
Anytime when when you ever really thought you might be done with wine?
I wasn't so sure, in 17. I mean, still own half the company, but it was time for a change. And I wasn't exactly sure what the future was going to look like. But again, I just kind of go. It's intuition. One might say not thinking things all the way through. All of a sudden you're in the wine business, right? I mean, I've been told, "Hey, Joe, you've got brilliant ideas, but sometimes you underestimate what it takes in the amount of time to get there," right? So left brain or right brain, it's a mixed blessing. I'm not complaining. I mean, we're doing fine. It's great. We're having a great time. But, the wine business takes a lot of money to make money. And just got to be smart. It's tough these days with, not as many people out in the market. Most people's sales are down. And it's part of any industry. It goes up, it goes down. Too many grapes, not enough grapes. But Oregon wine is here to stay. I'm incredibly bullish on Oregon and what we're doing. I think we're at not the top part of the market, but our wines are 50 to 90, soon be over $100 a bottle. And that market's not going to go away anytime soon. We're not trying to sell 25,000 cases either, right? It's less than 2,000 cases. It's very hands-on, high-touch. We're doing a dinner here fairly soon with a local restaurant, really great restaurant. 50 people or 40 people at the dinner. And we wanted to do 50, and the owner said, "No, I'll keep it at 40." The owner of the restaurant has sold that. Boom. We could probably sell out another one. So we'll be here in this beautiful place. Great food, great wine, great people, and watch the sun go down. It's a great way to do business.
Last question for you. Let's look ahead a little bit. What's next for you? What else is on the horizon?
Boy, I'd like to see my daughter get involved with the company. She works for Flaneur. She used to work for Dobbes as the assistant marketing director, and then she got poached and is running the show there now. She's a real talent. She's got her daddy's edge. She got married here October 21st. But she's great at marketing. She's a great writer. She has great vision. She's been instrumental actually in helping us, social media and all that stuff, and very involved in the webpage. Still is. And it'd be fun to see her become part of this. I don't know what the succession plan looks like. Maybe we build it up and sell it. Maybe she comes in. I don't know. We'll see. I'm only 40, so, Well, 40 years, yeah. Yeah. 40 years. Woke up and it was 40 years. It's crazy. All the changes in the industry. California once said we couldn't ripen grapes in Oregon. It was said we couldn't ripen grapes east of the Willamette. Who'd have thought where we are right now? It's a lot of fun to go to other winemakers' dinners. I was at Bethel Heights, Ben Castile, the other day at a local restaurant. I was on the other side of the table just listening to him and telling his stories. He's a real talent. He grew up in the industry listening to his stories and all, so it's fun looking back. I like to do that stuff.
Like you did today. We appreciate that.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover?
Oh, I'll think of it tonight, maybe, but maybe we'll do a third interview.
Exactly. I feel like we covered a good amount.
Appreciate the time. It's great to have you out here and your team.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us and sharing your beautiful space with us.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on 40 years.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let you off the hook.